This is Rodri. Right now, today, he's a Barcelona player. But before he ever set foot in that presentation, 17 months of his career basically disappeared. And almost nobody talking about this transfer is telling you that part. Because this isn't really a transfer story. It's a comeback story that happens to end with a transfer. So before we get anywhere near Camp Nou, we're going back to the exact moment it all fell apart. September 22nd, 2024. The Etihad. Manchester City against Arsenal. 20 minutes on the clock. Nothing dramatic happening yet. Rodri plants his right foot to spin away from pressure. The same little turn he's made 10,000 times before without anyone even noticing it. Except this time, the knee just goes. No contact, no tackle, nobody anywhere near him. The best midfielder alive goes down clutching a joint that will not hold his weight again for the better part of a year. And nobody in that stadium has any idea what they just watched.
Some breaking news, and Manchester City have confirmed that Rodri has suffered a ligament injury to his right knee.
Before that moment against Arsenal, Rodri wasn't just the best holding midfielder on the planet. A growing number of people had him down as the best player in the world. Full stop, any position. He'd already won the Ballon d'Or. He'd already won a European Championship with Spain and been named player of that tournament. In a final where, ironically, a hamstring problem forced him off before Spain had even lifted the trophy. Manchester City had just completed an unprecedented fourth consecutive Premier League title with him running the middle of the pitch.
Silva. Rodri! There's the roar!
He'd featured in more than 170 of the club's previous 190 league games. This wasn't a player who got hurt. This was the guy every single other plan got built around. And then, 3 matches into a brand new season, he was just gone. The diagnosis was brutal. A torn ACL and damage to the meniscus in his right knee, the exact kind of injury that quietly ends careers, or at the very least reshapes them into something smaller than they used to be. Surgeons in Madrid gave him a recovery window of somewhere between 9 and 10 months. Pep Guardiola, who usually chooses his words with some care, didn't try to soften it either. Rodri's season, in Guardiola's own words, was finished before it had really started.
Hi Pep, could you just tell us if there's any update on Rodri and the extent of his injuries?
Got surgery this morning, ACL and some meniscus, something, so next season will be here. This season is over.
Rodri would later admit the first 6 weeks were the hardest part of the entire ordeal, and it had almost nothing to do with the knee itself. That opening stretch, in his own words, was bad enough in terms of raw pain that he couldn't walk without help. He's since described the whole stretch as living through the best and worst part of my career, almost back to back, becoming the best player alive by Ballon d'Or standards, then losing the ability to walk normally inside the same 12 months. City felt the absence immediately. Without their anchor, the team that had just won 4 straight league titles fell 20 points behind Liverpool at one stage. And, in a twist, City got knocked out of the Champions League during that stretch by Real Madrid. The club he'd eventually be choosing between 2 summers later helped bury his team's season. While he watched it happen from the sidelines, he finally came back in May. 7 minutes off the bench against Bournemouth, almost exactly 8 months to the day after his knee first gave out. One of the most dominant midfielders of his generation, reduced to counting down a substitute's cameo like it was the biggest match of his career. A month later, he was named in City's squad for the newly expanded Club World Cup in the United States, and in a last 16 exit to Al Hilal, he was substituted again. Still visibly not the player who used to glide through 90 minutes without ever needing to catch his breath. That defeat was about as low as it got for him. And here's the part that lands even harder in hindsight. Almost exactly a year later, in that same country, he'd be lifting the World Cup. At the time, though, nobody watching that Al Hilal exit had any reason to believe that story was coming. All they saw was a former Ballon d'Or winner who looked like a shadow of himself, coming off before the final whistle in a competition City were supposed to dominate. The new domestic season started back home, and for a while the pattern just got worse. A start against Monaco, off after an hour. A start against Brentford 4 days after that, off after only 21 minutes, with a scare that echoed the exact injury that had pulled him out of the Euro 2024 final. He missed matches against Burnley entirely. Guardiola, whenever he was asked for a timeline, would only say that Rodri was getting better and that they'd have to wait and see.
Then the World Cup happened. Spain arrived at the tournament as reigning European champions, and Rodri, fully fit for the first time in nearly 2 years, walked back onto the biggest stage in the sport like none of the previous 17 months had ever happened. Spain topped their group after a draw with Cabo Verde and wins over Saudi Arabia and Uruguay, then ground down Austria, edged past Portugal, beat Belgium, and dismantled France in the semifinal in Dallas. Across all 8 matches, the backline built in front of Rodri conceded exactly once in the entire tournament. In the final, against Argentina, deadlocked deep into extra time in New Jersey, Ferran Torres scored the only goal of the game in the 106th minute. And Spain were world champions for the second time in the country's history. In that final alone, Rodri completed 101 of his 105 passes and won 4 out of every 5 duels he contested. He didn't score, he didn't register an assist, he captained the side, controlled the tempo, and protected a back four that barely had to do anything all tournament. Voters named him winner of the Golden Ball as the tournament's outstanding player, ahead of Lionel Messi and Kylian Mbappe, and in doing that, he became just the 11th player in the history of the sport to win a World Cup, the Champions League, and a Ballon d'Or. Months earlier, Guardiola had already told reporters exactly this was coming, that the world hadn't seen the best of Rodri yet, and it would show up at the World Cup.
Rodri had been and is an outstanding player. Rodri will be good, in the World Cup in Spain. In the World Cup will be the best Rodri, and the next season will be the best Rodri.
After the final, Rodri gave his old manager a direct answer on camera. 14 months earlier, he couldn't walk unassisted. Now he was the best player on the planet again. Captaining his country to a trophy most of that same country had waited 16 years to touch again. When you go down, he told reporters afterward, lifting the trophy above his head, you can rise again. So when Real Madrid came calling this summer, and they did, seriously, right up until almost the final hour of the pursuit, Real Madrid was the safe read, the crown jewel signing, walking into a super club that plays a straighter, more structured brand of football, the obvious next chapter for a 2-time Ballon d'Or level talent. Barcelona was something else entirely. Hansi Flick's Barcelona press like their lives depend on it, defend with a line pushed up near the halfway mark, and ask their deepest midfielder to cover more open grass in transition than almost any other project in Europe demands of that position. An enormous physical ask for a 30-year-old who just spent the better part of 2 years relearning how to trust his own knee again. Flick didn't buy him to score. Barcelona have no senior striker on the books this summer, yet their biggest fee of the window went on a 30-year-old holding midfielder because 2 league titles proved Flick's highline dominates Spain, and a Champions League exit proved it wasn't safe enough for Europe. Rodri is the player paid to close that gap. It's also why Flick had already described what he needed back in April, before this deal existed. Players who can stop a teammate mid-game and tell him to shift 2 meters left, or press now. At Euro 2024, with Spain behind Georgia in the round of 16, Rodri did exactly that. Stopped dead, ball at his feet, organized his teammates. Spain won 4-1, then won the tournament. And yet Rodri told Real Madrid directly that he'd chosen Barcelona instead, walking into a dressing room where most of his new teammates are guys he just won the World Cup alongside. Joan Garcia, Eric Garcia, Pau Cubarsí, Gavi, Dani Olmo, Pedri, and Lamine Yamal. Barcelona? It's an extension of the group of players he just spent a summer winning the biggest trophy in the sport alongside. The fee landed at £65.4 million, after City turned down bids of $40 and $55 million first, attached to a 4-year contract that runs to 2030 and reportedly makes him one of the highest earners on the entire roster. Not a squad depth signing, a club paying full price, twice rejected, for a knee that had only fully proven itself for 8 matches at the point they finally agreed the deal. Weeks after lifting that trophy, Rodri needed surgery again, a back problem this time, unrelated to the knee, scheduled in for the days after he got home from the World Cup. It means his first act as a Barcelona player isn't walking out at Camp Nou. It's missing the start of the season, recovering again before he plays a single competitive minute for his new club.
Rodri didn't survive 17 months of clawing his way back from a ruptured knee just to go somewhere easy and coast on the reputation he already had. He wanted to prove the whole thing wasn't a fluke, that the golden ball wasn't a one-off born out of a weak field of contenders, and that the player who couldn't finish 90 minutes 18 months ago is genuinely still the best version of himself, injury and all. There's no louder way to prove that than walking straight into the most physically unforgiving midfield project in European football and making it his own from week one.